and wants to watch your language. So I'm Mary Mahady. I am your township assessor. Is there anyone who's here from another township other than Mchenry? Okay, great, welcome. Oh, got a couple. Great, thanks for coming. I've been the assessor here since 2014 and have the scars to show it. No, just kidding. First, I want to just introduce my staff that makes me look good every day and works really hard, and I'm very proud of my staff, and a lot of you have already come in contact with them. But, so Terry Reeves is my Chief Deputy Assessor. Eric Floden, also Deputy Assessor. In the back, the ladies welcoming you, Eileen and Annette, both gone away. They're my clerical, do everything, and I'm so glad that they're with me. I also have 3 field staff, 3 gentlemen that are my field technicians. Basically, they go out into the field. You may have seen them at your home, or you might see them at your home if you appeal, and we haven't been there for a while. So there's Patrick, Chris, and Chris. But they go out, they're the ones that go into the field and measure your property, make sure we have the right information, ask you questions if you're home, take photographs, so that we know what we're talking about. So, I just want a couple of caveats before I get into the real meat of why you're here. Every assessment office in the county has an assessor, and they set their policies. So some of the things that I do here in my township, that's my decision. Not all assessors do certain things the same way. Okay, so just let's be clear about that. And tonight we are really trying to cover basics of how you appeal. Okay, there's just in an hour and a half or so, there's just so much information to cover. And we hope that tonight you will learn what will help you make a decision if you think you should appeal, or if you need to come in to the office to get some assistance, but hopefully to help you understand that this right to appeal, it is a right you have, and helping you to understand that process. Okay, so that's really the goal here. I will be around, and Eric and Terry will be here at the end as well, if you have some very specific questions about your property. But real specific questions about your property during the overall presentation is going to be difficult. Okay, so specific questions about the appeal process, that's great. Okay, everybody all set? All right, good. So what we want to tell you tonight is the basic information on why you appeal, how to appeal, what happens after you file, so basically what the process is, especially if you've never been through it before. And then we'll touch also on exemptions. So exemptions are really important to make sure you have all the exemptions you're entitled to. And unfortunately, we've run into, just since I've been here in office, a lot of people who think that they have certain exemptions, or that they should have had them for years and they don't. So we really encourage everyone to pay attention to that as well. So, I'm sure you're all here because your taxes are low, right? So you got your assessment notice, you're looking at it, and you now know what we have the value assigned to your property for 2019. There are several reasons to file an appeal. Mostly because you believe that the value that we've assigned to it is too high. I don't really recall anyone ever appealing because they think their value is too low. Yet to have anyone come in and say, please raise my assessment. You never know, it might happen. But anyway, so why do you think your value is too high? All right? So usually that is because you had a recent sale. Maybe you just purchased the property. Or recently, within the last 6-8 months, you purchased a property toward the end of 2018 or the beginning of 2019 up to today. If you did, and you purchased it for $150,000 and we have it assessed at $180,000, good reason to appeal. You have a basis for an appeal based on a market value. Maybe you had a refinance. Maybe you have a recent appraisal from a refinance application or some reason that you did an appraisal on the property that is a value different than what we're saying the property is, okay? Maybe you have your property on the market. Maybe it's on the market for less than what we have it assessed for. So it hasn't sold, but maybe there's an indication that something's off if you have local realtors or an appraisal, or the realtors are saying, you know, based on the comps that we have, this is what your home should be at. So that's a reason to be looking at an appeal. Maybe you have incorrect information. Maybe we have incorrect information, I'm sorry, on your property. We have you down for 3 fireplaces and you don't have any. We need to correct that. Okay, so that's in order to make sure that all of the information is correct. And I will tell you that there's a lot of properties out of our almost 25,000 here in the township that we might have inaccurate information. Always good to check that. Things, you know, when we go out there, we're going to correct whatever we find is wrong. But it's always a good opportunity to look at what we do have on your property so that you can correct it if it is wrong. Or we can correct it. Maybe you've been watching the sales in your neighborhood and you know that, no, they're not selling for that high. And if that's the case, that may be a reason that you're looking at your value and saying, maybe I'm too high. I shouldn't be that high based on what I know about the sales. And that would be sales of similar types of homes. If you've got a raised ranch, you should be looking at the raised ranches. If you've got a 2-story, you should be looking at the 2 stories. There is one reason not to appeal them, and the reason that your taxes are too high is not the reason to appeal. Because really what you're appealing is your assessed value. As your assessor, that's the only part of my job that I'm responsible for. The only part of the tax process that I'm responsible for is placing a value on your property. We can, discuss that. You can not agree with me. As far as the resulting taxes, those are a result of what the taxing bodies levy for and what portion is yours based on the value of your home. So the value of your home is important to have it right. It's just that if you know that your taxes are high, or feel that your taxes are high, is there anyone here who doesn't think their taxes are high? No, everybody. We're all in the same boat. We all know that taxes are the taxes, but it is based on your market value, so it is important to pay attention to it. And that's why thank goodness, that's why you're here, to try to find out and why people appeal. So, I'm going to back up a little bit because maybe you don't know for sure. Maybe you don't know what the sales are in your neighborhood. We do have a website through the MchenryTownship.com, and you can go to the Assessor tab, and we have on there a separate section that lists recent sales. So it's not always the easiest to go through, but it is listed by PIN number, by parcel number.
What was that, McHenry Township?
MchenryTownship.com, all spelled out.
Is there any way to find out, you got houses, you got PIN numbers, you got dollar numbers for the house, you don't have bedrooms on there, you don't have square footage on there?
Okay, so the question was, we do have square footage, we don't have bedrooms on there because we don't assess based on bedrooms. We look at the square footage is one of the main things that we would look at. If you're looking at those sales online or in my office and looking at the books, we can get you further information you can call and say how many bedrooms.
And I think you'd have a website up and you'd say, okay, it's 3 bedrooms, 2 baths.
Well, again, we don't.
Today, I went through 200 pages today. It took me hours because I got to pull them out. Anyway, that's the website.
I'm not going to tell you my website's perfect, but I will tell you my staff is perfect. If you call here and you say, how many bedrooms in 123 Main Street, we're going to tell you, okay? We're not trying to make it harder for you, but we have the sales out there. Like I said, you can come in here and we'll help you find sales, we'll help you look at the assessments in your neighborhood to see if you're fairly assessed. we're here to help you. We're not here to discourage you. We want you to, if you feel you have you want to appeal, we want to do what we can to help you do that. That does not mean we always agree with you. We may, you have the right to say you don't think it's right. But we're going to help you to make sure you get that appeal filed, because what that does is that gives you an individual review of your property. What I do now is mass appraisal. With almost 25,000 properties, 85% of which are residential properties, there's just no way we can do every property individually. And that's not the law, actually. We're required to do it as a mass appraisal. So in a neighborhood, we kind of throw everything, all the ranches together, stratify them by square footage, and look at the sale prices. So when you appeal, it's an individual review of your property based on what you think is comparable to look at, and then we get a chance to respond. I had a question in the back here first.
The total square footage calculation, what is that based on?
Okay, the square footage. The question is, what is the square footage calculated on? We measure from the outside, because your closets are part of your square footage. If you measure on the inside, you measure your bedrooms, it's going to come out differently. We measure from the outside, all assessors do that. And
If it's a two-story?
if it's a two-story, my field staff, we will try to, let me back up a little bit. When there's a new construction, we get into the new construction to see, is there a two-story foyer, things like that. That's why it's important for you to look at your square footage on your property, because the difference may be that you have a two-story family room that we were saying is 2 stories, okay? Mm-hmm. As I said, it's not perfect. We don't normally get in the homes, and if in the past no one got into the home before somebody moved into it, we may not know. So you need to work with us and make sure that we have the right information. But generally, if it's 2-story and it's a pretty square thing, it's going to be 2-story, doubled square
Double
footage.
your outside dimension?
Correct. And they will measure bump outs. You have like a raised ranch, you have a little kick out maybe for 2 feet or something. That's additional square footage. So it will be represented in a drawing on your property. So you can see the drawing on your property as well to see how we come up with that square footage. Okay?
Okay, so we live in Brittany Heights, and there's not many ranches in the Brittany Heights subdivision, which we have. And so are we looking at all of Mchenry for ranches, the same square footage that we have, or just in a certain radius of our own?
Okay, so the question is, they have a ranch. If there aren't many ranches in your neighborhood, certainly maybe none that have sold, where would you go? So what you want to do is think like a buyer. If you were going to look for a home like yours, and there weren't any in your neighborhood, where would you go? If you live in Fox Ridge, okay? And if you aren't familiar with that, you might not know what I'm talking about. But whatever, people generally tend to know what neighborhoods are comparable to theirs. Not everyone is going to live in Stilling Woods, or a home in an area that might be mostly custom homes. Okay? If you're in a pretty much a subdivision that there's 4, maybe 5 styles of home, you're going to find some. Maybe they haven't sold, but if the buyer was looking for a ranch and there weren't any in your neighborhood, where would they go? You can always ask staff about that too if you can't find any. Okay? Did that answer that? Okay. Yes, sir. Then I'll go back to you.
The square footage when it comes to a basement versus a walkout basement versus an English basement, how does that affect the square footage?
Okay, basements. Your basement square footage is not considered part of your living area. Okay, so you're going to see above grade living area. That does not include your basement. We do assess for the difference in having a walkout basement or an English basement. An English basement, for those of you who might not know, would be like your windows are above grade, you can see out, but half of that lower level is in the ground. And a walkout would have a full walkout to the backyard. Okay? So there is a difference, and again, a lot of these are things that you find in the market. If you have two homes pretty similar, one has a walkout basement, one doesn't, and the one with the walkout basement typically is going to sell for more. There's a value. If it's not reflected in the market, it's not considered. But generally, that is the way it goes. Did that answer your question?
In that case, then, what's your multiplier relative to areas, water versus non-water, Dutch Creek versus Cooney Heights, et cetera, et cetera?
Are you talking about the township equalization factor? Is that what you're talking about? Okay. So all of you got your assessment notice, and there was if we didn't make any changes to your property, you saw a 4.75 increase in your assessment. Okay, that was what our township equalization factor is. That number comes from the state. That's the difference between a 3-year average from where sale prices are and where assessments are. And when we get a positive equalization factor, that means our assessments are too low overall. We need to raise them to bring you to ideally 33 1/3 of market. Ideally, we want everyone closer to what their true market value is. We don't want people to be really low. Now, everybody wants to be really low, and we don't hear from most people, but that's my job, is to make sure that they're not really low. The township factor, each township has its own factor, and that's based on the activity in the township. And that changes every year because it's a rolling 3-year average. That really is, but that number goes on every property in the township.
Universal.
In the township, not any other township. We have a township factor, Nunda has a factor, Burton has a factor. Every township based on the activity in their township. Okay? So that's really kind of in the weeds here.
Is there a distinction based on location within that township?
Is there a what?
Distinction based on location within that township?
No. It takes the sales in the township. Doesn't matter if the sales in Wonder Lake, Lakeland Park, Dutch Creek Estates, doesn't matter. The sales and the difference between where sale prices are and where assessments are. Okay? So it's not a perfect system, and that factor is not always going to be accurate on every property, which is why it's important to look at your value. Is that appropriate for your home? Okay?
So you can pull comps out of Wonder Lake, McCall Lake, and that's going to be considered as equal to.
You're going to have to talk just a little louder.
You can pull comps out of Wonder Lake and McCall Lake, and that's going to be equivalent to Lakeland Shores, Lakeland Park. That's a good comp. You're going to recognize that as, okay, well, there's a square footage is the same in Wonder Lake as it is in Lakeland Park.
Okay, so if you're pulling, so just let's be clear, whatever comparables, if you're trying to find homes that are comparable to yours, you can pull whatever you want. That might not be what I would use, but you can use what you would like. But again, if you think that that's a property that is comparable to your home, location-wise, value-wise, you can use it. It's my job to put in what we think is to use what we think is comparable, and at the end of the day, the Board of Review gets to decide.
It's just an opinion.
It's all opinion. If you get an appraisal, it's an opinion of value, which is why you get to disagree with my opinion of value. Okay? Somebody else had.
Yeah, right here.
I'm going right here first. Okay. Yes.
One question about the distance from your house. Now, you just said that you could use other township properties, right? If they're equal in specs. And is there a mileage distance? Isn't there something like 25 miles from your house or something rule like that?
Is there a distance that you should go to find comparables? The rule of thumb is generally closer to, if you have sales of homes like yours in your neighborhood and you don't use them, I guarantee you I'm using them, okay? Because the best sign of what your value is sales of similar homes in your own neighborhood. Generally, in an appraisal, Appraisers try to stay within 2 miles. If you have a very unique property, you might have to go further, if you're on acreage or something like that. Again, if you were going to a real estate agent and said, you know, I want to sell my home, what would you put it on the market for? They're going to find the comps that are most comparable to your property. If you have to go further out, you're going to go further out because to find the more comparable property. But I guarantee you, if you've got comps close to you in your neighborhood, those are going to be the ones that are given the most weight and consideration. Because you can't ignore them. If somebody a house right next to you is pretty similar to yours, and you ignore that sale, why? Why would you ignore it unless it's too high? Right? So you have to look at what's going on in your neighborhood. I'm going here first.
Have you ever used Zillow?
I don't use Zillow, but you can use Zillow. I don't know where they get their information, or, you know, at the end of the day, the sales are going to justify a price.
Right.
Okay? And I have to justify my assessments. If they're off, they're going to be corrected. If Zillow is something you use for information, that's fine.
I wanted to get an idea what my property is worth, and so I take a look at what the properties are selling for when you're looking at it.
Sure, gives you, yes, you can, it's
I don't
certainly
know.
one.
Would you rather I call you and say what these places are worth?
You can call me anytime. Wherever you need to get the information, okay? The idea is that I don't want anyone to make themselves totally crazy by appealing, okay? I don't have, it's a tough process. Homes that are comparable to you, that if your home was for sale, what would you compare it to, okay? We don't, and then the discussion comes after you file, okay? Then we get to look at what you sent in, and we get to see if that makes sense or if there should be something else added. So, wherever you need to get your information, if you need to verify it or you want to call my office, we're happy to give you that
I'm
information.
just wondering, if I want to sell my house, how would I price it?
A lot of people, when they go to sell their home, they're going to call a real estate agent, or 2 or 3.
Okay.
You could do that now. If you have a realtor friend, because everybody has 3 or 4 realtor friends. What is my house worth? If you bought your home within a few years ago, within 5 years, call that agent. Hey, what's my home worth now? They can pull comps for you, okay? They can help you. Heck, I'm a realtor. I pull up comps for people all the time. But the bottom line is, whatever you want to pull comps that make sense. And I know it, the Board of Review knows it, everyone who's going to look at the appeal knows if it's their legitimate comps, okay? That's what we want. We want to get to the fair, what's the price? And it's still an opinion of value. It's an opinion of value, but, you know, it's up for discussion. Okay, so what do you have? You have a question here. Everybody's got questions.
I keep looking at my style house and I'm trying to find comps, and they're not selling. That model isn't selling, or something sells, and I'm trying to get a comp, but I have a problem with the 3rd-car garage. There's a lot of houses like mine, but they're 2-car garages, and I want to know what type of weight you put on the extra 3rd-car garage. That square footage is just,
Okay.
it's nothing. It's
Let's be clear. As long as we're talking about comps, and God knows I don't know where I lost control. But don't get hung up. There are no 2 homes that are exactly alike. Even the same model, not exactly alike. Okay? If you've got a ranch home and it's got 300 square feet difference, great. You still can use it as a comp. If it has a 3-car garage and you have a 2-car garage, fine. If you have, how many people are familiar with appraisals in here? Have you ever seen an appraisal? Yeah. What do? They say, you have a 2-car garage, they have a 3-car garage, so they take value off of the one with the 3-car garage to make it like yours. If you are looking for the exact home, you are never going to find it. Right, Roger? Never going to happen. It's not a perfect system. And not every buyer, the sale prices can be, there could be $100,000 difference between certain types of homes. Why? One at the high end might have gold faucets. We don't assess gold faucets, okay? But somebody paid for them. So we have to look at the best comparables that are out there that have sold, actually sold, closed, paid for, not on the market, okay? And the adjustments for the differences will be addressed, okay? So don't make yourself crazy looking for an exact duplicate.
When you file an appeal, can you include distress sales, comparables, shorts, foreclosures?
Question is, can your appeal include foreclosure, distress sales, foreclosure, short sales? Sure, you can include them. I will tell you, myself and my staff, we will not use them. Doesn't mean the Board of Review won't look at them, but I will not be looking at them. You can use whatever comparables you want to use, okay? And then it's my job to say why I wouldn't use them. Yes, ma'am?
Can you find out what you compared my property to before I would appeal something to see, you know, maybe I do agree with you based on what you found before I appeal it.
Okay, the question is, can you find out what I'm comparing your property to before you appeal it? If we've revalued that subdivision this year, we will have sales from 16, 17, and 18 in that packet, basically, that we could show you. The problem with that's what I'm required to use, like a 3-year average, and the intention of that is so that, you know, when everything's going up quickly, that assessments don't go up like at a point in time. There would be 2018 sales in there if we've done the your neighborhood this year. So you can certainly ask us that later, and we can let you know that. If we even if we haven't revalued, we have those sales are online, and they are listed by PIN number. If you are an 0933, you should start looking in that neighborhood for, you know, you're going to recognize streets, you're going to recognize styles, and you can pick out homes that way. But we certainly can give you the counts or show you the counts that we used for any area that we revalued this year. Okay? You want to go right here?
So we're here trying to, you know, ultimately reduce our taxes, okay, by this appeal process. But what if it goes the opposite way? What if we find out that our property should be, you know, assessed higher, so you're going to process that and then get an adjustment to our taxes again?
Okay, the question is, when we find that your home is actually worth more than what we have it assessed for, will we change the assessment? No. The Board of Review does have the authority to do that, but gosh, in my 25 plus years of experience, I've seen that once, and that's only because it was really egregious. But no, generally, if you're at 150,000 and you want to be at 130, and we do our review and we say, yeah, really, you could be at 170, they're not going to change it to 170. Okay? You say thank you. Yes, sir.
Can I appeal on the equity of assessment? I think my building is over. Not my land, because I live on the river and I understand I'm paying more because of that. But I think my building has been over.
Okay, can you hold that till let's get through some questions on sale comparables, and then I'll come back to you because that's really changing gears there.
Earlier you answered a question about basements, and I'd like you to clarify that a little bit.
About what?
About basements.
Basements, yes.
So originally you said the area of a basement is not included in the square footage calculation. Is that true regardless of whether it's finished or unfinished?
Question is your again, back to basements. So say you have a 2,000 square foot ranch, and you have a full basement, 2,000 square foot basement. Your square footage is going to show 2,000 square feet. We're going to add value for a 2,000 square foot basement. It's not going to be the same dollar value as your finished living area, but we have to account for that. Because we all know homes with a basement are going to sell for more than homes without a basement, generally. Generally. But there is a value there. That concrete is worth something. If you go to a builder and they give you an option of a basement or no basement, you're gonna pay less if you don't have a basement, because there's value in that. So, and if it's finished, okay, again, that finish is not added on at the same above grade value. Say you're $30 for above grade, you might only be at 10 for basement. Okay, so it's just because it's not living area. At the end of the day, it's the whole picture. What is the value of that house with that basement, with that garage, with those bathrooms in that location? Okay, so that helps them out. Gosh, it's long over here.
I have a question on assessments. I have 22 pages here of houses that are in my neighborhood that all went up. Our home neighborhood was reassessed this past year. These 22 homes went up a minimum of 10,000 points to 15,000 points. What did they base that on?
What neighborhood are you in?
Lakeland Park.
Okay, Lakeland Park. Okay. Lakeland Park, so the question was, all these homes went up about 10 to 15,000 in market value.
And
In assessment, in assessed value, gotcha. Okay.
that's a lot.
It is a lot, it is a lot. So my job is to put property values, again, where they're supposed to be in relation to what's going on in the market. We walked Lakeland Park and we revalued Lakeland Park, all 900 homes in Lakeland Park, based on the sales. I will tell you that was painful, because a lot of that is an area that hasn't been done in a while, hasn't been walked in a while.
Can you tell me how long ago?
I'd say we're close to 30, 40, 30 years or more.
Oh my goodness.
That's not unusual. I'm not bragging about that. I'm just saying that that's the reality, is there's a lot of properties in this township that no one's been to in a long time. We're working our way through it, and as of now, we're not even halfway through, maybe somewhere between 9,000 and 10,000 parcels that my staff have walked. But the fairest way to look at what is a home in Lakeland Park worth, what should the assessment be, is looking at the sales that have happened over the last few years. That happens to be an area that there were a lot of foreclosures, a lot of really low values that ended up being left down there, and it's my job to correct that based on the different, because here's what happens. If there's an area that's significantly low and it's not brought up, and I'm not picking on anybody in particular, but you pay less, other people pay more. If your home is worth an X amount, 150,000, and you're assessed at 100,000, the other people who are at 150,000 are not happy. They want you to be assessed fairly as well, and that's my job.
Well, it seems to me that this would be a whole subdivision that's not happening. I mean, when you increase it in 1 year, our assessment went from 2017 to 2018, it increased 2,000 points. This time it increased 15,000.
Because prior to this year, and this is what I've seen since I've been here, every year when we've revalued subdivisions, the reality is that after the crash, and after 6, 7 years of negative factors, values went down, and sale prices started going up. And we can't keep up with them. So the benefit to anyone in those areas is that they're paying on a lower value than they know that they can sell the property for. I don't hear from those people. Nobody comes in and says, could you raise this a little bit, because I think it's too low. Nobody says that. So, and sometimes the sales just take off so quickly that then there's this big gap.
From what they could come up with, is there was 4 sales that were comparable to our home. How can you base it on 4 homes?
Since January 1st of 18, there were 57 sales in Lakeland Park. We have sheets of them. Just such a very hot area as far as when people were looking for homes. And that's part of the reason we went in is because when we see that many sales occurring in an area, that's telling us there's something going on. We gotta go take a look at it. And that's why we
Does that
want.
justify raising it so rapidly, so much in 1 year?
Again, there, for the last 16, 17, 18, 3 years, there have been positive equalization factors. That means assessments were too low, sale prices were too high. Even with that, the areas that we revalued in 2019 were still significantly low. That was 21%. They went up over 3 years and still didn't bring them in line with what homes were selling for. That is my job, to bring them up to that. It doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but I guarantee you there are sales, and we're happy to share those with you if you want to come in.
I've got 22 of them.
Okay, you've got 22 of them. Great, so but they're...
And I have 22 comparable pieces of property that have the same square footage.
Okay.
And they all have gone up a minimum of 10,000.
And again, when we, just so you know, when we revalue an area, we do that, when we walk the area and revalue it, we do it based on mass appraisal. It is everything, you know, the ranches get put into a bucket, for lack of a better word. You know, if you're under 1,000 square feet, you're in this group. If you're between 1,000 and 1,500, you're in this group. If you're over 1,500, you're in this group. And we average it out. And if you're better than the average, we add value. If you're lower than the average, if the average is 2 bathrooms and you only have 1, we take value off. But if the methodology is the same, you don't have to agree with it, and that's why you have the appeal process. Okay, so I understand that these bumps are big. This is not, my staff can tell you every time I start going through this process, and I come out and go, oh no, they're going to come in here with pitchforks. Because I know that, but at the same time, that is my job. And the goal is to get values where they should be, so that the tax burden is distributed evenly, and people are paying their fair share. And again, when I have heard that many times, that you do it a little bit at a time. That's called the equalization factor. And if it's not catching up, I have to make sure that we put values where they're supposed to be. It's not that I get any satisfaction out of making those big jumps. I know that those are, I understand that. But ideally, everyone's supposed to do
Does it justify the
that.
fact that you're pricing people out of their homes, taxing them out of their homes?
Okay, so I'm going to go back to, I am not pricing people out of their homes. That's one of the things that is a fallacy. Here's the thing.
Based on an assessed value that is taxing us out of our homes.
Okay, so we're going to back up a little bit. All of the taxing bodies that are listed on your tax bill, those boards on those taxing bodies determine how much money they need, and they're going to get it. Okay? At the end of the day, all the tax money that comes in, they're going to get it. My job is to place a fair market value on your property. The appeal process is here because if you don't think it's fair, you have the right to appeal it. Okay? It's important to get your value where it should be so that you are paying the appropriate fair share based on a fair market value. I do not control the levies. I do not control the tax rate. Your disagreement with me is the value of my home correct for January 1, 2019? If it's not, it will be corrected. If it is, you're still not going to like your taxes. Nobody likes their taxes. We already determined that. There's nobody here who's happy. But those taxes go to the local taxing bodies listed on your tax bill. And again, this is a whole bigger conversation. There's, maybe things that can be done for school funding and things like that. But until that happens, we all, as a community, share in paying those taxes to provide those services. You can argue all day long with me about your value. I am not responsible for the taxes, okay? Yes, sir.
Who determines the equalization factor? When you get like the,
What we were talking, the equalization factor is what we were talking about earlier,
who determines that?
the state.
Okay.
The state looks at, again, 3-year average of the difference of where sale prices are and where assessments are, and that's your factor that goes to ideally bring all properties up to 33 1/3. Ideally is the word there. I'm going to go right here first.
It's gonna be real quick, I don't know if this is gonna make this, longer feel better. So she's saying that Lincoln Park, he had like a big bump this year. So would it be fair to say that, because last year I got that, when you go in and redo a whole area and you play catch up, that maybe they were getting a good deal for a bunch of years and now you caught up?
No,
I just, no, it was a question I'm asking, it's just like, were they under-assessed for many years and now it got caught up and so they should maybe not feel so bad?
Well,
I just put it past this.
no one's going to feel good, no matter what their taxes are, okay? If you're under-assessed, you still don't like your taxes, okay?
Right.
But if we correct it and there's that big of a jump, it's still got to be based in reality and the proof has to be there. It's not that, again, no one's going to ever feel good about their taxes. You could argue, you can appeal your assessment, you can get your value lowered, you're still not going to like your tax bill. No one is. So the only thing you have some control over is that value correct? I had one here.
Okay, so clarification on your answer to this gentleman's question a moment ago about equalization factors. So according to the property assessment notice, there are 2 factors. The one you quoted earlier, 1.0475, is the local equalization factor for Mchenry Township. So you're saying that that factor comes from Springfield?
Can I answer that?
There's a second one.
You know what, I'm going to let Terry's going to answer this question.
So there's a second one listed on the back of the form that talks about state equalization factor, which sounds to me like that's different from the 1.0475 listed on the front page.
Okay, part of that I'm going to answer first. So the difference, the local factor is based on what I told you, the sales and the difference between sales and assessments in this township. We have had a few years where we got a state factor. That's a whole, when all assessments are done, and that's a whole big thing that goes on with the whole county. If they start at this level and there's too many changes, the state will put a factor on it. It's happened 3 times, I think, 2 or 3 times, like 2011, 12, and 13, 11 and 12 for sure, where the state said, you're still off and we need to add more. And that's after the Board of Review and all of appeals. So there is another state factor. Very rare that it happens, but that happened after the crash, basically, when you started way up here and after Board of Review appeals, the values were way down here, and that's when the state factor applied. But it's all math, they're all formulas. As far as the township factor, I'm going to let Terry answer that, because Terry has worked in McHenry County in the Supervisor of Assessments office. Then they moved her away to Winnebago County, where she was Chief Deputy Supervisor of Assessments. And I'm just glad I could talk her into coming back to McHenry. But anyway, she's going to answer that question about the local tax rate.
Basically, when they look at each individual township, they look at the sales the 3 years prior. They look at all the sales, they look at the assessments compared to those sales, and if they're not at 33 1/3, then a multiplier has to be applied. Could be negative, could be positive. What I did at the county is we went through and did sales ratio studies that we needed to submit to the state to show where each of the townships fall. So again, if the township isn't at 33 1/3, then you have to add the multiplier. And it's individual per township. Because you could go up to, say, Alden Township, which is very small, very rural, who would have very few sales, and they may end up with either a very large multiplier because there were no sales, and they certainly weren't at 1/3, or because they were farm sales, and those aren't considered in the sales ratio study. It really depends on each township individually. I think Nunda Township, if I'm not mistaken, may have around a 4.5% as well. They're not done yet with theirs. But Chemung Township, for instance, Chemung is the farthest northwest township. They have some residential, some rural, very little industrial or commercial, just a little bit of retail. They were looking at a 9% equalization factor. But what happened was the township assessor went ahead and revalued, looked at subdivisions, looked at sales, and they ended up with just a 1, no multiplier. Because he tried to do it as fairly as possible so that everyone was fairly assessed and was able to do that. Now what we tried to do as well, we were looking at originally a 6.15% multiplier. But when we looked at revaluing a lot of the areas, we were able to level that off a little bit, and we went down to a 4.75. It really is math, and the state goes through, they go through all the sales, they return them to the county, and then as a county, we would go through, because the state makes mistakes too, we all know that, and we would have to go through and make sure we agreed with those sales they felt were arm's length, you know, meaning they were marketed, they weren't relative sales, they weren't foreclosures. It is a long and involved process. It takes weeks, if not a couple of months, to go through it. So it's not just a random number that's pulled out of the air. It's really a lot of statistical work, and I've done many of them, and you know, I remember realizing how difficult it is to not only work in the assessments office, but also work in a township office and make sure we are trying to do things fairly and according to the statutes. Did that answer a little bit of your question?
Thanks, Terry. So, just real quick, because that really is getting in the weeds.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the fair cash value of your property, if you think that's incorrect, that's what you're arguing about. It doesn't really matter how we got there. If you think it's wrong, that's what you're appealing. Any more market questions? I have this gentleman over here.
It's really about, again, how you come up with the number. You said square footage is a significant part of the calculation, total exterior measurement, square footage. What about the lot size? Where does the land and the lot size play in? How important is it if I'm looking for comps?
Okay, so the land is important because that's where your house sits. But at the end of the day, we're required to break the value down to land and building. If we put $1 on the land and everything else in the building, if that's the right value on your property, that's the right value, because your assessment is that total of the land and the building, okay? Some areas were assessed on site value. Like every property in Dutch Creek is 60,000 market value. Everyone, doesn't matter. Some were done that way. Some were done on a price per square foot, 25 cents per square foot. So if you've got 2,000 square feet more, you're going to have a higher assessment. At the end of the day, it should be uniform with similar sized lots and in your neighborhood, if you're comparing your assessments, and that's part of it. But the overall picture that the Board of Review is going to be looking at is, you know, are we taking value out of your land and putting it in your building because really you're assessed at 300,000 market value and that really is your value? They can move value from the land into the building if that's your assessed value. Okay, so really, I'm not going to say that there's never a time when that's not something that needs to be fixed, but really the overall value of the property is what we're targeting to get the right value, because when you sell that home, you're selling it on that land. Okay, so what is the total picture value? That help? A little bit, yes, and then,
Yeah, so we talked about valuing neighborhoods and but still distance from your house for comparables, and you mentioned Stilling Woods. Stilling Woods is in my backyard. Like, that's Stilling Woods, I am not. So that's pretty close. Were any of those sales calculated, or is there like a demarcation line where it's like, nope, they're not Stilling Woods, don't worry about those numbers?
Good question.
just because the neighborhood next to you is next to you does not mean it's a comparable property,
Right.
okay? So you want comparable properties.
Okay.
You wouldn't go to Stilling Woods. Actually, I don't really know what your house looks like, but just because you're in Pebble Creek, right?
I don't know what it's
Stone Ridge,
called.
Pebble Creek.
Golden Oaks, I don't even
Oh.
know what it is. It's not Stilling Woods.
It's not, yes, we know you're not gonna use Stilling Woods.
Yeah.
Yeah, and part of that's you're gonna see that. I mean, if you think you're gonna use a neighborhood right next to you, take a drive through it. Are those homes that look like yours? If they're not, don't use them, okay? So, those are also questions we can help you with here in the office too. If you're looking for other comparable areas, ask, okay? We just can't answer all of those tonight. Okay.
Move
Real
on.
quick.
Move on.
Does a homeowners association have any value or devalue on your property? Is that considered any part of that value?
If there's a homeowners association, it has no bearing on your market value, as the
Devalues in
market
my
sales
mind.
do.
I have
Yes.
a question. I want to clarify. Do you assess every year? Because from 2017, it was assessed at a value. And then 2018, it assessed higher. And then 2019, higher. So it's every year you assess, and you take the 3 years prior. So for 2017, if I'm understanding this correctly, taking 16, 15, and 14 to assess, and then the following year you do the same for the previous 3 years, and so on. Because the reason I'm asking is because 2017 to 2018, it was $9,000 additional assessment, and 5,000 more this time. Okay. And then the value of the home is much higher in comparison to another home similar. And so it's access to the bunch of homes, the 25,000, I mean, you said 85% that was assessed, and that's how the assessment came about to assess the value of the home. Is that, am I understanding this right?
Okay, so let me pare that down a little bit. Properties can be assessed every year if we find that there's a need to do that. And that's why we go into certain neighborhoods that are too low to correct them. Every 4 years, we have a general reassessment year, or quadrennial. That's 2019. We're required to look at every property. That does not mean I have to visit every property. It means we have to look at the assessments in those areas. And if they are too high or too low, we can change them. Because that's the job, to look at them all and say, and believe it or not, there were a whole bunch that were lowered this year, okay? And we did an awful lot of work, but we added a lot of value, and then there were areas where we had to take it down. Because quite honestly, folks, there are people who never look at their assessment, and maybe have been too high, and based on a factor, they keep going up and up and up, and all of a sudden, they're like really high. So that's also what we do. We will take a value down if we think that it's too high. So to answer your question, you may have been in an area that we revalued, which made a bigger jump because we were catching up to where we thought the value should be. Then the next subsequent years, you would get the township factor that goes on every property, okay? The key to remembering, and I'll probably say this 30 times in the next half an hour, if you think that value is not correct for January 1 of 2019, that's what you're looking at. If that's incorrect, that's, as far as market appeal, that's what you're looking at. The board isn't going to care what it was in 16, or what it was in 17, or even 18. They're gonna, what's it worth now, okay? So My job is to correct them as necessary, and because we have so many properties, I can't do 25,000 in 1 year. So we look at the ones that are the most egregious, too low, and try to fix those first and bring them up. Okay, so that's how we do it. And it's a moving target, folks, because guess what? Prices are continuing to go up.
Right.
So even when we change, and even when we correct them, it doesn't mean that they're even still correct by the time you get your assessment notice. You're 9 months after that valuation date based on what's already been happening. And then you get your tax bill a year and a half after that
So in
valuation date.
essence, the assessment is higher, or the value that we put it on the home is higher every one of those years, 17, 18, and 19, so, which means that I have to appeal each time.
You can appeal every year if you'd like.
If the value is not where it should be, is what I'm asking.
Well, the fact that we're getting positive equalization factors means that sale prices are going up, folks. We had 7 years of negative factors because assessments were too high, and the state said, your assessments are too high, sale prices are too low. But it's a rolling 3 years. So as you're coming down on the assessments and prices are going up, we got to catch up. It's all math, and it really is, I mean, believe me, I'm kind of crazy. I like to talk about these things, but it's not going to help you as far as appealing. So the key is every year you look at your assessed value. If you think it's wrong, you should appeal it. The township factor may or may not be appropriate for your property, and that's, again, we don't look at your home every year. You do. If you think it's wrong, you need to appeal it.
Why
Is
does
this
it
a
go
mar-
up every year?
Because sale price, I'm telling you, we did not get a positive factor until 2016. From 2009 until 2016, we had a negative factor. Come into my office, I'm happy to show you your assessment went down. What you are thinking of, and most people are thinking, your taxes went up. Your value went down, your taxes went up. Different issue. But when there is a negative factor and sale prices are low and assessments are high, it goes down, that percentage. The reason we're getting positive factors is because sale prices are going up. I don't make up the sale prices. I'm a realtor, and I don't believe some of these sales, but I don't make them up, and I have to use them because the state uses them. When they start going down, if they start going down, you'll see a downward trend. It's all based on market, and it doesn't matter if you recently bought your home, or we all know, like it or not, this isn't California, for a lot of reasons, like it or not. They have a system where they say you paid $250, you're assessed at $250 until you sell the home. Or you paid $150 for the same home and you're at $150 till you sell the home. My personal opinion, I don't think that's fair. And that's not the system we have here anyway, so I have to work under the system we have. If we ever get that system, whole different story. But right now, it's based on market value. What is your home worth compared to other homes like yours that have sold? And that's what we base it on. And if you call the realtor and you said, what can I sell my home for? That's exactly what they're looking at as well. Real quick here.
There was actually a recent article about Mchenry County, and then another one I saw about Lake County. Don't quote me on these numbers, but they were both basically saying the same thing about both counties. Assessed values over the past number of years has gone down, or the assessed values of property have gone down in Mchenry County, while the taxes, the amount you pay in taxes, has gone up. So, in your defense, I mean, the amount,
that is a true statement.
The amount in taxes that you pay is not a reflection only of the assessed value. It's a reflection of the taxing bodies.
Okay, so I'm gonna jump in here. And again, this is a little more, I'll try to do this as concisely as possible, but the total value, wherever your property sits, you share that tax burden with all the other properties that sit in all of those taxing bodies with you, okay? Every year, there are properties that go up or down, and we had many years where there were a lot of foreclosures and short sales, and they were lowered significantly. Guess what? They could be sitting in the same house as you, paying on $50,000, you're sitting in one for $150,000. You're gonna pay more, they pay less. The tax rate, it's all math. The formulas that are used, like them or not, are in, that's the formula. How much money do the taxing bodies need and will get, divided by the value of the properties that are paying that, you get a rate. When you have a higher value, market value, divided into the levy, if the levy stays about the same, your tax rate will go down. It's math. Trust me on this, it's math. If you look at your tax bills from at least 16, 17, and 18, you're probably going to see it. You go to the bottom right-hand corner, right above that lovely number that tells you what your taxes are, is the local tax rate. That rate is the same rate for everyone who pays into the same taxing bodies you do. And if you've got a $100,000 house times 10% rate, that's what you're paying. Somebody's got a $200,000 home, barring any exemptions, different exemptions than yours, they're paying the same rate. And it should be double that, because the rate that you pay is its all math formula. So, values can go down, and when values go down, they don't all go down equally, and that means the higher values, and what happened in Mchenry and Lake County, foreclosures, short sales, judicial sales, they were all lowered. Now, that's a whole other argument I can say, I don't even agree with that, but that's what happened. And because of that, the people who bought those properties got the benefit of paying lower taxes. People who didn't buy a foreclosure or short sale paid more. Not a fair system. Come back another night, I'll be glad to talk about that. Because those are state issues, those are laws, those are things that happen that I have no control over, and that's why your assessor's job is to try to get those values to where they're supposed to be, ideally, so that you're paying the appropriate amount of taxes to share the tax burden, okay? It's not a perfect system, but we need everyone's help to watch their assessments and appeal if you find it necessary. Now, me, I could be here all night. I don't think all you guys want to be here all night, but I really want to touch on equity. Do you have a real quick question on sales here?
No, I'll catch it later.
Okay. All right. So, the gentleman back here asked about equity. We've been talking a lot about comparing when you look at your value, you might say, sure, my home is worth $200,000, maybe more. But I'm going to check my neighbors who are similar to my home. I got a ranch, I'm looking at down the street, I'm looking at this one, this one, and this one. They're only assessed at 150 or 160. Why? Well, can't answer that right off the top of my head, but if you see, so what we call equity is treating your property the same as similar properties. Okay, we shouldn't penalize you. You know, you shouldn't be way up here, the only one up here when everybody else is down here for a similar type of home. Again, that's equity, distributing the burden fairly. So if you look at the assessments of properties like yours and you see that you are significantly higher, you can appeal on equity. And that means you look at those same type of homes, what they're assessed at. The formula is basically the building assessment divided by square footage, gives you a price per square foot. If you come out at $32 and all of your similar homes are at $25, there may be a problem, okay? If you do that and you're looking and you're all kind of, 32, 31, something, you're kind of in a range, there may not be a problem. That's a close range. But what you're looking for is a difference where you're assessed significantly more based on the assessment, not on market value.
Right. My penalty is my land, which is okay. I've taken that out because I'm on the river and there's comparable homes that aren't on the river and their lots are 5,000 and mine's 25,000. I'm not doing that. I'm doing just the building. Is that
okay?
Reasonable?
So your question, this gentleman's home on the river. So typically, when you are looking at if you're comparing assessments, you want to stay in your neighborhood, similar neighborhood. The bad news for you, your neighborhood is the river. All the river. Okay? So you might be surrounded by 3,500 square feet homes and you're 2,000. You might have to go into Johnsburg or somewhere else, somewhere along the river, the other side of the river, to find a home that's similar square footage, similar amenities. Those are the ones you want to compare it to. Comparing your assessment, your value to a home off the water, it's not the same neighborhood because the values of that neighborhood, the waterfront homes, totally different than non-waterfront.
What I'm paying on the land, I mean, my improved lot, I'm paying a lot more than somebody who's not on the river. So that's my burden of living on the river and paying more. I'm okay with that. I'm not trying to say that I shouldn't pay on my land. I'm just saying that I have to find homes that are on the river.
Correct. If you're looking for comparable homes, because here's the thing, again, at the end of the day, what if our value on your land is wrong? Maybe it's too low.
But they're all the same.
Well, I'm just saying, it's possible that, sure, you don't have a problem with the land value, but it's the total picture. So if you add that land value and your building value together, that is a market value, you can compare that. But if you're looking, that's what your market value is important for. For equity, you want riverfront homes because those are assessed similarly with a larger land value. The building value should be closer in line based on that. Okay, so your neighborhood is the river. Yes, sir.
The building value, if you're on a river or off the river, if you took that building off the river lot and moved it across the street on a non-river lot, it's going to cost the same to build. He's paying a premium for the lot, and that reflects in his assessed valuation. So he should be able to use homes in his neighborhood as comparables if he's appealing only the equity assessed valuation of the building itself. It's not the lot. It's no.
Okay, so the comment is he should be able to use the ones off the water. Here's my answer. You can use whatever you'd like. My response will say, I will compare you to homes on the water. You can submit whatever you'd like. I'm just telling you what, in my many years of experience, it's not the same neighborhood. If you wanted to compare the assessment in Lakeland Park to Dutch Creek Estates, you're not in the same neighborhood. The valuation per dollar, per square foot is going to be different. So you can use them if you want. You'll still get a review, and I would still have to support my value based on comparables that are waterfront. You don't have to like that system, and you can make that argument to the Board of Review, but that's been the process.
So you're saying anything on the river in Mchenry Township, even if it has different schools, even if it has city sewer and water, even if it's septic, that doesn't matter as long as it's on the river. That's the neighborhood.
I didn't say that. The differences, so the question was, differences that there are no differences in waterfront. There's differences, especially on the water. There's very rarely two homes that are similar, okay? Just like an appraisal. If you said, here we're, two-story and similar square footage and similar things, but this one has sewer and I don't, there is an adjustment for that. You have another garage or they have an extra garage. There's an adjustment for that. But the overall value for the type of property in the neighborhood, waterfront properties are a neighborhood. And that's why when people say, well, waterfront homes on my street aren't selling or they're just looking at their block, that's not your neighborhood. Because if a buyer for a waterfront is looking for a property, they're looking all the way on the water. They're looking on the other side. They're looking all over the place. So that's why. But I'm going to move on. But you can use what you want, but your neighborhood is important.
If I'm on the river, can I compare properties? Like, if somebody's on Pistaki and I'm on the river, is that different?
Okay, is it different from the lake to the river? Sure. If there are no sales on the river, go to the lake. But if there are sales on the river, those are the comparables that are most like your home. How many are familiar with the bay, Pistaki Bay? If you're on the bay, do you want those homes compared to the riverfront homes? I don't think so. As a realtor, if I went into somebody on the bay and said, "Oh, sure, I'm going to compare your home to McCollum Lake," they'd throw me out because it's not comparable. Again, the closest property to yours, if there aren't any, you go to the next thing, and an adjustment can be made. But you have to think, what would a buyer pay for my home? And at least on market, okay? On equity, it would still be better to use riverfront properties as opposed to lakefront properties.
And do you guys ever use a flood zone or not in a flood zone for that type of assessment?
Flood zone for waterfront property. Okay, that's an interesting concept, that you buy a home on water.
Well, because my neighbor's not in a flood zone, but I am. We go on market value, okay, because as my staff will hear me say to people, it's not always flooded. And people buy homes on the river, and the prices are there. I don't make them up. Yes, properties flood. Yes, some have to have flood insurance. Part of living on the water. It's part of the beauty. At the end of the day, when somebody doesn't like their assessment, we don't say, I'm going to guarantee I'll hear that I'm in a flood zone or I flood all the time. Yes, I know you might flood, but you're on the water. What are people paying for those properties? Because again, I just said this earlier today, that when you go to sell your home on the water, you're not taking pictures standing in 3 feet of water saying, "Buy my home." That's not how people buy homes, right? Because the number of days might be annoying and it's part of it, but people still buy homes. We go by the sale prices. Okay. Yes?
I'm having a hard time coming up with really good comps, but I found a comp on the water, and obviously I'm not on the water, but I found a comp on the water, sold for what I'm appraised. It's bigger, it's on the water. Is that a good comp?
I'm going to go back to, you can use whatever comps you want. It might not be a comp I would use. I would not use a waterfront comp on a non-waterfront property. That does not mean you can't. What you want to remember, again, I have to support my assessment. If you put in all comps that I don't like, I'm going to come up with comps that I still have to support my value, okay? So put in the best comps you have that you can find, and we're gonna hash it out. And even if I don't come to the number you are requesting, the board of review has the ultimate decision. Okay? Yes, sir.
Haven't been to the website yet. The PIN number, it sounded like there might be a format that it's in my neighborhood if it's 00 something in the beginning, or is there a key to the PIN number?
The pins would be in Mchenry Township 09, start with 09 or 10, 9 or 10.
But it doesn't say if it's in my particular neighborhood or.
No, but it's listed by PIN order. So if you're in 0901, you can certainly see. Doesn't, the next one, you can flip through there, you're going to see it has a street name. You're going to know the streets that are comparable. I'm going to try to. Yeah, we got to go through the form. Oh my gosh. Okay, so like I said, I have nothing to get. But anyway, so this form, appeal form, you all got an appeal form when you came in, okay? The first page of this is all information that's about the property, your name, your address, your phone number and email are very important in case we need to contact you, what we found, what we're looking at, okay? Whether or not you want an in-person hearing. What that means, if you mark the box, I want to appear before the Board of Review. I'm gonna hold on to that one for a minute, because, we got a couple other things. I'm just gonna go through the rest of the form first. You just wanna answer the questions on here. What are you basing your appeal on? Comparable assessments, comparable sales, if you have a recent sale, an appraisal, matter of law, you just built the home and you have construction costs. You want to fill in what the current assessment is on your assessment notice, and then what you believe the value should be. In the total column of that section, if you think your home is worth $300,000, a third of that is $100,000. So that would be your total. So you're looking at the assessed value, not the market value. Figure out what you think your value is, divide it by 3, that's the number that should be in the total. Okay? The second page is a grid where you would put your comparables, and that's the same for either comparables on market or equity. If it's sales, you're providing the sales information on the property. If it's equity, you're looking at the price per square foot. They don't have to have sold. There are properties in your neighborhood that you think are comparable that are being assessed differently than you. But we're looking at, in the assessment part, it's your assessment. Your assessment is a third of your market value. If you are looking to fill this out online or at home and you have questions, and we can help you. We can walk you through them. Usually on the phone, if you want to call, we can usually walk you through that. If you fill something out wrong or miss something, the important things are, what are you appealing on? What's the basis of your appeal? If that's not marked, may not be sure. Maybe some of the equity that you put in there, maybe some of those sold. Are you appealing on sales? Are you appealing on equity? Are you appealing on both? And yes, you can appeal on both. And if you appeal on both equity and sales, we will look at both. Okay? You want to make sure you sign it. You are not, in McHenry County, you are allowed to give someone the power of attorney to represent you. You don't have to hire an attorney or a tax rep. You'd have to give them power of attorney to do it. But you can give power of attorney on this form to your child, your sibling, your spouse, your real estate agent, your neighbor, whomever you want. There's a form that you just have to say, I can't make it, but I'm giving this person the authority to talk for me. We're the only county that allows that. So you don't have to be paying any additional fees to appeal your assessment. Okay, not at this level, not at the local level. You get to the state, it's a different story. But
Which box do you check if you're appealing on incorrect info?
If you're appealing on incorrect information, I would mark matter of law, because that would be, and then if you think matter of law, but if you have something that's kind of unusual like that, and to protect yourself, to make sure you do get your appeal, you would want to write a little note that says, I think you have, my square footage is 2,000 and you have it at 3,000. I think something's off. Well, we'll get to that, okay? Yes, sir.
What is meant by condition?
What is meant by what?
The row condition on the second page.
Yeah, condition on the comparables. Again, this form is basically set up like an appraisal form. If you think your condition is poor, that's probably the only condition you're going to answer. If you think it's good, it's average. If you don't fill it in, your appeal isn't going to be thrown out. Okay?
And my second question was about dates. Date of sales, should we include within what time frame of January 1st, 2019?
Okay, so the sales, if you're looking for sales comparables, generally 6 months before, 6 months after. So like June 1st through June 1st of 2018 through June 30th of 19. But the sales closest to January 1 are always going to be given more weight. Okay? If you have a unique home and a property very similar to it sold earlier in 18 or September of 19, use it, because you know, that if you have a unique home, the board has the authority to say, we can go where we need to go to find that value that really reflects what your property should be at, okay? Again, the board, the value is January 1. Closest to that date is always best, but the board has the authority to extend that or narrow it down on their own. You know, they can say, no, we're not even considering that, it's too far out. We have enough close to January 1. But the bottom line, use the comps you think are most comparable and support what you think your value is, okay? Yes, sir.
It's set up like an appraisal sheet. Typically what you see in appraisal, obviously, as you know, there's adjustments for basement, no basement, or 3-bedroom versus 2, or 3-car garage versus 1 car, or whatever the case. Can we call you and say, what kind of an adjustment would we have for comparable that has a basement and I don't, or has 3-car and I've got 2, that sort of thing? Would you give us that number, or we just leave that blank and let the...
We can, you know, that doesn't mean the board's going to agree with our number, but we certainly, when you fill this out, you're not required to make any adjustments. So what happens is that, and we haven't quite gotten there because God knows we've been talking about lots of fun things, but when you fill out this form, whatever you fill out goes to the county, they send it back, they send a copy to the assessor. We not only get to review it, we're required to respond to it. And we will put those comparables, whether it's assessment or sale comparables, on what we call a grid. Kind of looks like this, and there'll be all the information and adjustments that we've come up with. Typical for the market, generally. Typical, like, that's why a property in an all-custom area might be $50 a square foot, where a property in low-end homes might be $30 a square foot. So there's different adjustments for different market. Again, getting a little more in the weeds, but we will do that, and anything that we come up with, we will share with you. You'll see exactly what we're looking at and what kind of adjustments. You might not agree with it, the board might not agree with it, but that's why you go through the process. We're going to...
Can we come in and do it without doing the whole process, and just come in and say, hey, I was going to reevaluate my property, can you look at it and say, can you say, these are the comparables I would show against your house? And we can look at that and say, oh, okay, well, you're right, see ya, and then we're all done.
The short answer is no. So the question, in case you didn't hear it, can you just come in and say, hey, here are my comps, or look up some comps and you can see that there's a problem and just change it here. The reason we don't do this, and this is one of those policies in my office, that is extremely unfair. If you have the ability to come in and somebody else doesn't, I'm giving you a benefit of making a change at my desk. I will tell you that when we are reviewing the appeals, rarely are they short time frame, because we really do review it. We look at what you put in there. We look and say, are these good comps? Is there something that maybe we're missing? Is there a reason to make an adjustment? Most appeals are going to take at least an hour. If you've been in my office recently, you're going to know I don't have an hour right now to sit and look at individual reviews. So the other thing is, if you come in today and say, here's my comps, or here's my appraisal, change it on this, and I say, oh, okay, yeah, fine. Again, if you'll see my desk, a lot of stuff on my desk, I might not look at it again until October 19th. Guess who's too late now? You are. That's not fair to you. It's not fair to anyone else who, like, we spend all this time answering questions, helping people file. File it, make sure your property gets reviewed with the full benefit of the entire process, because as you go through this process, what you're going to see, if I don't agree with you, that's why you have the board of review. That's why you go there. If I agree with you, great. You don't have to go sit before the board. But in the event that we don't, that is the full process. You have a neutral board that's going to make that decision, okay? So you're penalizing yourself. Even if you just bought a home, and I know I'm going to agree to that, you're filing an appeal. That's just the way it is. Everybody's gonna file, everyone's gonna go through the process, every appeal will be reviewed, and you get the benefit of the entire process. No one gets special treatment, so that's fine. Okay.
It says recent appraisal. What's recent? How long?
A recent appraisal? Okay, so, recent appraisal, again, typically would be 6 months either side of January 1, typically. But if you, I'm never gonna tell you if you had an appraisal done in May of 18 or February of 18 that you can't use that as your evidence. If that's what you have, our goal is not to make you spend more money, okay? You had someone tell you your home was worth this, and you don't, and it's different than what we say, you'll still get a review, okay? We might say, or maybe those are the best costs still, but we don't want you to spend more money. We want you to try to get a review based on at least, what's out there. Doesn't mean you're going to win, but if there is a reason to lower your assessment, it's going to happen because it's math. It's out there. The information is out there.
What alternative would I have if there are no comparative homes sold from January 1st, and then the most recent would be July? Can I use this as a comparable, which is similar to my home? Can I use this? Because it's not January, it's recent, this year.
Right, there's very few homes that, the question is, if your comp's a little bit further out, can you use that?
Yeah,
right.
Because there are no other sales in my neighborhood except for that one home, and it was in August. So then, what's the other alternative would I have?
Okay, so right now, literally, because we're closing October 18th, if you bought a home on October 18th and walked in and said, I'm filing on this because this is what I paid, they're gonna look at that sale. If it's in your neighborhood, use it.
I can use
If it may be the best sale. If there are others, we're gonna find them. If there aren't, they're not there. Okay, so you use the best comps, and whatever, again, remember, at the end of the day, the assessor still has to support their assessment, has to prove it. And even if we do, the Board of Review might agree with something else.
I want to make sure that if my house is worth whatever you valued, that's great. Then I'm like, okay, if I'm selling it, then this is the value that I will have. But if it's not, then that's why I'm like trying to maybe appeal or trying to get this value reduced so that the assessment would be, at that level.
Right. The bottom line for everyone is if you don't think your assessment is the right value, that's why you appeal. That's market value. Or if you think you're being treated differently, that's equity. But whatever the reason, if you think your assessment is incorrect, that's why you appeal, okay? You just have to have evidence to support it. You can't just say, I think it's too high. Well, based on what? Like the things we talked about, a sale, comparables.
Right.
Okay? Yes, sir.
Can I fill this in online and submit online?
You can file it online, and any documents that you have for evidence, anything, can get uploaded to the county. I will tell you, I don't run that program, so if you have questions on that, you have to call the county. Yes, sir.
My question has to do with the additional parcels. The wording is slightly different on this versus this. You ask for the appellant's estimate of assessed value. On this, you say appellant's estimate of value. Why the difference?
Because I didn't make the form. The difference in the wording on the form, I understand, that can be confusing. What they're looking for is what it's assessed at, what you think it should be assessed at. Okay? So, and there is we didn't give you the second page, but if you have, a third page actually, if you have more than one parcel, like if you have 2 or 3 lots, you get 2 or 3 tax bills, and you don't have, if you're looking at your property all as one, and you're saying, okay, here's my 3 parcels, I think the value of all of it is 150, and as a total, you've got me at 180. You want to list those other parcels, and there's another sheet for additional parcels, okay? If you don't do it, we're probably gonna do it, but if you know that you have additional parcels, you should get one of those forms. I think those are online as well. If you can do it online, it goes right to them, and they, that's your file, and you should get some kind of receipt from them. If you do fill out the forms by hand, you can drive over to Woodstock and drop them off at the Board of Review, or you can mail it. You can mail it up until October 18th, as long as it's stamped with a U.S. Post Office date of October 18th. And guess what? Online, I think that if you are in at 11:59, you're still in on October 18th. So there's that benefit. I feel like there's a lot of stuff I can cover here. So, if, something else I want to cover. If there's something about your home that you think that is a condition issue, like all the homes in my neighborhood are great, they're all updated, mine's not, and you want to submit some pictures, submit pictures to show what you're talking about. Okay, pictures say a lot. But to just say, well, my home is different, or my roof is, or my back room is totally gutted, there's nothing in there. Well, we don't know that from the outside, so take a picture, make it part of your appeal, and that says a lot. Okay, so if you have something you're trying to explain, pictures help. Wow. Okay, I'm just going to real quick go through the process again, just so you understand. You file the appeal with the county, not with me. The county sends us a copy. We get to review it, and we are required to respond. That response can be, we agree with your request. We can say, we confirm, we can prove and submit evidence that supports our assessment as it is, or we might be somewhere in between. If we agree with you, or we're somewhere in between, you're going to get a call from someone in my office. It says, hey Mary, we reviewed your appeal, we agree with you, we can sign a stipulation because we agree. You sign that, that goes up to the Board of Review, they still have to sign off on it. And that, again, is to make sure that I'm not giving benefits to my friends and family. Okay? They want to make sure that those are appropriate adjustments to make. If it's somewhere, you think you should be at 150 and you're at 200, and we do our review and we come in and we're at 170, we're going to show you. I'm going to send you that grid. So here's what we did. Here are the comps. Here's what we used yours, or we didn't use yours, or we used some of yours and we added some. Here's what we did. This is what I think is a fair value. You might not agree with that, but if you do, we can do a stipulation. If we don't, my evidence that says 170 goes to the county. The Board of Review looks at your evidence and my evidence. They're the deciders in that. If you have an in-person hearing, okay, that's where it goes back to on the form, hearing or no hearing. It doesn't say no hearing. It's in person, or just decide on the evidence that's provided. If you mark an in-person hearing, and we end up stipulating, agreeing to some value, they don't expect you at the hearing. They're not going to schedule you, okay? But if we don't agree, and you want the opportunity to sit before the Board of Review to say she's crazy, and you need to change this, or make any other remarks about your property to the Board of Review, that's your only opportunity. And you will also hear how they make their decision. They're going to talk about it right there in front of you. They're going to come up with a decision, and you're going to know what that decision is when you leave the room. Okay? So that's, if you are the type of person who wants to be there to make sure you can have whatever say you want, I would mark attend in person, and if an agreement is reached before that, the stipulation actually says stipulation and waiver of hearing, so you're not required to go. They're not going to expect to see you. Okay? So, your phone number and email, very important on the forms. If you do not attend the hearing, and you just send in your information, and you're waiting to hear what happens, you if you're not attending a hearing, you will not know what our evidence is unless you go to the county website and pull up your parcel information where they file all that. Or when you get your notice, your final notice from the county. The Board of Review does the entire county, so they hear all appeals. That process goes on into February. There's no benefit for filing on October 1st or October 18th. All appeals will get heard. We have to respond to the appeals as the board tells us what they want. So there's no rhyme or reason sometimes, but just know that if you don't get a call from us in November or December, that doesn't mean you're not getting heard. It just means we're not at your appeal yet, okay? So we're happy to, if you are concerned, you can call. We'll tell you if you're scheduled, you're not scheduled, we aren't even in that neighborhood yet, or whatever. But it's a long process because it's a whole county. So don't be concerned. Every appeal gets reviewed, has to be reviewed and acted on in some way, shape, or form.
Mary, historically, what percentage of appeals by citizens succeed?
What percent of appeals succeed? Depends on the year. I say 2010, 2011, 2012 was like, shoot, fish in a barrel. If you appealed, the sales were there, okay? It's gotten a little harder as sale prices have gone up, as neighborhoods are revalued. It's a little more difficult. So, I don't really have a percentage. I don't really know, but I will. All I can say again is that in my policy is, if we're looking at an appeal and we're close, we've reviewed it, we're going to agree. If there's something that says that our assessment is wrong, we're not going to fight it. I don't get paid any more or any less. If it's right to make the change, we're going to make the change. Okay? That's what's going to happen. So that's why we review it. We review it honestly and fairly. If there's a reduction warranted, we're going to recommend it. Even if it's not to exactly what you want, if we see a reduction is warranted, we're going to recommend it. Okay? So it's definitely getting harder as the sale prices are going up. It's just a harder thing to argue. So that's the best answer I have for you.
Is there any benefit to giving more than 4 comparables?
Is there any benefit to more than 4 comparables? Not really. You can submit as many as you want, but the Board of Review and even myself, we'll pare it down to the best 3 or 4. Because you can always pare it down. Might say it's all the same except 3-car garage on that one, and this is a 2-car garage. But again, you can submit as many as you want. But my experience is that it's always going to come down to the best 3 or 4. Sometimes it comes down to 1. Sometimes there's just not enough evidence for any of it, and there's one comp that the board will say, you know what, we don't like these, but this one's pretty close, and we're going to go with that one. So, and sometimes you only have 2. If you only have 2 that are really good, just submit 2. Okay? So there's no rule to it. I will tell you on the forms, if you're writing, they're very small boxes. So I thought they should have left it at 3 comp lines and give you an extra sheet if you need more, but don't make those boxes so small.
Do you have any contact info at the county, where we go in person, what departments over there, what building?
Okay, so the county, the supervisor assessments office is in the administrative building in Woodstock, 667 Ware Road. That is information that's on your assessment notice. Are you looking for information to drop it off? Okay, so you go, it's room 106, supervisor of assessments office, and you just go to the counter, and they will, the address is also on the top of your appeal form, okay? If you mail it, that's the address. If you drop it off, because the mail address goes to the main courthouse, which is like 2200 North Seminary. They have one big mail room for all the government stuff over there. They're not all in the same building. But if you're walking it over 667 Ware Road, we're in 106. No, 667. 3 numbers, 667. It's getting late.
Exemptions. What else?
Exemptions, we're down to.
We were just wanting to do it. Oh, state, because they want to go to P.
Okay, so just, again, trying to wrap this up. When you file an appeal, it's always acted on. If you are not happy with the decision of the Board of Review, you do have the right to appeal that to the state. It's a whole other process. It's very similar to this. You have to provide comps and send it in by a certain deadline and all of that. But you do have an avenue to go higher than the local Board of Review if you do not agree with that decision. If you're okay with whatever is decided, even if you're not okay with it, the decision of the Board of Review will be certified. That's what your next tax bill will be based on. That value. Reduction or no reduction, whatever that number is, that's what your next tax bill will be based on. If you appeal it to the state, it's going to take a little time. You're going to go through another tax cycle probably. And if there ends up being some reduction at the state level, there's a correction to that 2019 assessment, and any overpayment would be refunded to you. So it's just a little longer process, okay? And I will tell you, our goal is our goal is to get them right, okay? If we can get them right at the local level, let's get them right. I might fight about a lot of things, but if I don't have the evidence, I'm not fighting it. It's going to be there. The sales are there, or the assessments are there. If it's there, fine. If I feel that it's right, I will defend it, but I have to have something to back that up. Okay? It's not personal to me. I mean, it's not personal in that it's my job. If I feel I have the evidence, I'm going to support it. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Guess what? If it's wrong, we're going to correct it. That's what I mean when it's not personal. There's a lot of assessments out there. If they're wrong, let's fix them. So that's the best we can do. But if I'm right, I will defend it. And it still doesn't mean the Board of Review will agree with me. They might agree with you. It happens. The Board of Review doesn't work for me. They work for the county. They work for the entire county. They're a neutral panel. They're not there to just do what the assessor says or agree with the assessor. Believe me, we have to verify. They'll ask us questions. Why didn't you use this, or why did you do that? They will ask. It's not a slam dunk that if we end up going to a hearing, that the assessor is going to win. But again, going back to, I'm not going to fight something I don't think is. I'm going to have a right to fight. If there's a reason to lower it, I'm going to recommend it, and my staff will too. It's not a perfect system. Mistakes happen, things are wrong, we look at them in an individual review. If there's a correction, we're going to make it. Okay? So, one, I want to thank you all for coming. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, when you're at home filling out the forms, or you can come in, you can call. We'll help you walk through it. It's not. Our goal is to help you during this time to appeal, to get what you need to appeal. We're not going to tell you which comps to use, but we're going to make sure you get that filed and get your opportunity to have your appeal heard. Okay? And we don't want you to be afraid of the system. It might be complicated. Don't worry that you don't think you're asking questions there are no stupid questions. We've been doing this a long time. Don't be afraid to ask. We're here to help you, walk you through the process, make sure you get the full benefit and extent of that process to get your due process. Okay? And that's why we're here. Spread the word. We're really not here to make your life miserable. We're here to do things fairly and get to the right number.
Should we call your staff to make like an appointment so we don't all barge in at one time? And
Yeah, please don't all get on a bus and come tomorrow morning. But, so our office hours, 8:30 to 4:30, it's a first come, first serve. If you have a limited time frame, you can call and make an appointment. We also have several days with extra hours. Those are listed on the MchenryTownship.com website. There's some weeknight, evening hours, and a couple of Saturday mornings. So for people who cannot, we don't want you to have to take a day off. If you can't get in here, come in, make an appointment for one of the extra hours. But those are by appointment on the days that, not here. But again, some people say, I can come in on my lunch hour, but I gotta see you at noon. Great, let's make an appointment, and we'll see you and take care of that, okay? Yes, sir.
Promise, nice question. Talk about the river being the neighborhood. Can we go into another township if it's, like, none of the townships starts on the other side of Charles Mill Road?
Right. Actually, before that, but yeah.
Okay, yeah. We're real close to that. Can we go into another township and use those assessments?
Here's what in the river, the difference with what homes you want to look at is the dam, the McHenry Dam. If you have to go through the locks, the buyers for riverfront property either want to be north of the locks or south of the locks. There's a big difference. So there are some areas like along River Road and even into McHenry Shores. Those are McHenry. They're still north. Like State Park Road would be the line there. As a realtor, I found that that's really what buyers do. I don't want anything south of the dam. I don't want to be messing with the locks because it takes too long to get through them. I want to be up here. So I would suggest you stay north of the dam because there just really is a different buyer. If you have a really unique home, we know the river goes up, but I will tell you there's been a lot of sales on the river, but even if something's really unique and you're on the lake, Fox Lake is just on the other side. Maybe there's a sale over there, okay? So,
but my neighborhood is the river, Woodland Park, either side, Orchard Beach,
sure,
all the way up and down.
Sure,
okay,
you betcha.
Okay, all the way up to the mountain.
Right. It's very rare that a buyer says, I only want to buy a home up in Mount Carmel.
Right, exactly.
They want to buy a waterfront property and they want to see them all. So that's the difference. But if they want a waterfront property, they're not looking across the street at the non-waterfront. And then the dam, no dam difference is, I think, is a big difference for waterfront buyers. So, did you still have a question? You're all still awake. I like this.
I have a good closure question.
Okay.
Mary, with your history, you inherit the numbers, you inherit the tax percentile coming down. There's not much you can do about it. We have all these agencies and public service groups out there dictating what their budgets are going to be. I don't hear any of them ever talking about reducing their budgets. Do you see any light in the tunnel? It's no mystery how many people are leaving the state. Do we see any light in the tunnel at all, upstream?
Okay, so as far as the taxing bodies determining their levies, I would say, and I know for sure here at the township, it's either been held or reduced over the last 4 or 5 years. A lot of the taxing bodies are being more responsible to do that. Not all of them, but that is part of our, I'm getting on my soapbox a little bit because that's your job we need to be watching to make sure they're spending money responsibly. The part that makes it hard on how much your taxes are and what our tax rate is goes more to exemptions, okay? So we have an older population. We have more people who are getting a senior freeze. Veterans that are 70 to 100% disabled pay no taxes. In Mchenry Township, we have, I could be wrong, but it's at least 129 homes that pay no taxes. What that does is changes the tax rate. So the more exemptions there are, that shifts the burden and changes the tax rate. So that's part of it. The foreclosures, the law that allows, that they made in 2010 that said you buy a foreclosure, you can lower it to that value. I've never agreed with that, but they don't care what I think. But that's what happens. We can live, and a lot of the foreclosures are perfectly fine.
We have a case where Johnsford just bought the golf course and that came off the tax bill, right?
Correct. Any property that's owned by a government entity will not be paying taxes, and the golf course now owned by Johnsford, no taxes. There's a lot of those, all of that plays into it. More commercial business would helps the tax base as well. We're 85% residential, so that tax base, as far as property taxes, is always, not as much commercial. So, and it's probably always going to be about that split, just how this area is set up. But again, if we start getting values closer to where they were, because when people say, well, everything goes up, it's only supposed to go up 2 or 3% a year. Well, that's like when everybody was where they were supposed to be, and then they're still going up. Okay, so they kick up a little bit. They kick up. That was great, but then we're still recovering from that crash. Really, that did so much to assessments, and again, my opinion, unfairness, where you have the same home as me and you're paying on $50,000, I'm paying on $150. That's just wrong. That doesn't go along with the system. But this inequity is getting closer, and that's my job to try to correct that. And again, it's still a moving target. A lot of the assessments we changed for 2019, the sales come in. They're still higher than what we put them at. It just keeps moving. So, but again, at the end of the day, it's just really about, if you think it's wrong, appeal it. We'll go through the process, and any correction that should be made will be made. So,
Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you for coming. Thank you very much.